All right. Well, welcome back to Positive Connections Radio, everybody. I am with an amazing guy I just met last week, but our stories are pretty similar, but totally different. His name is Brock Bevell. Brock, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So you were a cop, undercover cop, got into pills, and now that you're recovering and you're giving back to other people. So I totally get that. You were a cop where in Arizona, right?
Yeah, in Mesa, Arizona.
Okay, so how'd you get into the field of being a cop?
Man, it's interesting. I always wanted to be a cop since I was a little kid. I have those little books when you're in primary school. What do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be a cop.
Wow.
And I want to be a cop because I was sneaking in my dad's closet one time. I was sifting through his clothes. There was a bag, man. I was like, what is this? I pulled it out and I found at that moment that he used to be a police officer as well.
And he never talked about it.
Didn't talk about it, man. He didn't share it. He was in education now. He was a football coach, loved coaching, and it was just a part of his life he didn't talk about.
What was it like finding that? Is that sort of like boast or something else different in you or what?
Oh man, when I checked it out, I took the bag off. He had a hat, the old school hat with the badge, and the Mesa badge was super old. It just was cool, man. And I put the clothes on, everything's hanging off me. I was like, you get that glimpse.
Sure, sure. Did you ever talk to him about it?
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked, and he still had when I got on, he still had a connection there who was actually one of the chiefs. But it's not something he wants to chat about. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but no, not a lot.
Well, and I was a cop for 19 years, and I know that it's hard for us to talk about things, especially emotional things that we've seen or did that no one really understands. For
Yeah,
Christ's sake, a lot of therapists don't even understand us when we go see them.
yeah, and that's kind of the problem that we're having in addiction recovery is I kind of hate the word stigma because I
Yeah.
don't know what it means. You know what I mean? Like I've checked out the definition, but everybody's like, "Oh, we got to break the stigma." I'm like, man, listen, there's not I don't think there's a stigma around it. I think it's a lack of education. For me, when I was going through, when I was a police officer, I didn't know where to turn.
Mhm.
I didn't have any resources ever offered to me except for what you said, a counselor. After I was in a shooting, I went and sat down with him. The guy didn't know he didn't even know what a fist fight was,
Mm.
let alone getting in a shooting and talk about a traumatic situation like that.
Right.
And so I totally agree with what you're saying is people they don't understand it.
I like the stigma because people would know that word. I know it's said a lot. I say it so much. Even my son told me, he goes, Dad, you use that word stigma so much. I go, oh, you listen to my podcast? He goes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think what I look at it as that it's something we can relate to where it's a tradition of not talking about things. We're brought up in a culture that we don't talk about our problems. And then when we get hired, we get to do all this kind of training. We can handle any kind of situation. We're bigger than life. And sometimes we're human. We forget that we're actually human. We're not treated that way by the public. And I remember my very first training officer said, Mike, I'm a robot in a monkey suit. And he was LAPD for 5 or 7 years and came over to my department and worked. And he was at probably year 15 or so when he was my training officer. And I never wanted to really categorize myself that way. I didn't want to believe it. But when I got around year 15, I felt like I was the machine. So, but I'm really glad that you're on this show. I really am. I know last week we were introduced by Michael Segru. He's really into spreading the word and talking about what's going on with him and PTS and the things that you've gone to also. And most of the listeners here are who understand law enforcement, understand first responders, and we're just be able to be like a voice to be able to help other people. So going through your law enforcement career in Mesa, I know you experienced a lot of stuff. You don't have to go through all the different things because we both experience it, and a lot of people listening have too. But tell us what the basic feeling was with your department? You said there wasn't much help. The counselors didn't really get you. You've been in a shooting, but no one really knew what to do about it. What do you think it was then that could have been, and what has changed now, if anything?
Ooh, that's a deep question, man. I mean, I got on in 1997, so that kind of, I mean, a few years ago,
Yeah.
you know, and so I got on, and I just remember learning from the old timers. You know, you come into briefing, you don't talk,
Mhm.
you listen, you mimic what they're doing as they sit there, and you've gone on these calls with them. You know the traumatic experiences you've seen, and when they're asked, "Hey, how are you doing?" "I'm great. I'm perfect. No problem." And man, I was like, "What the hell, dude? I'm struggling with it, but no way am I telling anybody
No, no.
because he didn't talk about it. He went through the same trauma I did. So if I say something, then I'm that guy that's on the ledge. You know what I'm saying? That gonna lose his job. I was always concerned about that. I
Yeah.
remember we went on a call. You talk about PTSD. I had a 2-year-old daughter, right? And I went to a call, and the dad come or mom come running out of the house with this baby, handing me the baby to do CPR on it.
Wow.
And when I looked down at it, I saw my daughter's face, that projection. You know how your brain plays. And I looked down at that baby, and man, I broke down for a second.
Yeah.
And so you talk about but no way could I go tomorrow the next day and talk about, man, hey, that call, it really affected me.
Hmm.
We didn't have resources. We didn't sit in briefing and our sergeant say, listen, if any of you are struggling with anything, here's a hotline. Here's a resource for you to talk to. You know, maybe it's outside the agency because I know that there's an unwritten code that if I talk about it, they can put that in my file,
Hmm.
right? And they're gonna document. Oh, that was one check against Brock, and I was always concerned about that because I didn't want someone to look at me and think, hey, I don't want that dude on a call with me.
Right. Right. Can't handle it.
Yeah. And so I masked and I hid, and I'm thinking to myself, damn, did nobody else feel that
Right.
yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do we do instead? A lot of us go home and drink. We don't know how to talk to. And usually when you're drinking, I don't know how much of you got into it, but for me, it was a way to release and talk about those things that you couldn't talk about sober. And then the next day, you could always have an excuse. Oh, I had a couple too many last night. That's why I was crying like a little baby on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing that the culture and the police culture too is like that. A fire department's a little bit different where they're able to sort of, process it on the way to the scene, on the way back from the scene. They live in the same house together. However, we have a lot of dark humor that gets us through the hardest parts of our career. And but when it comes to kids, there's nothing. There's no joke. There's nothing that is serious. And we're sort of made to have that level of command presence where we get to a scene, we have to be high and tight. We have to make sure everything's set, and we have to be in control, even though we might be breaking up inside.
Yeah. Shut it down off. Yes, I agree.
So I know I listened to your last podcast with the courage to change. You went through a lot of stuff there. That was a really good one. If anybody's interested in listening to Brock's story, you got a lot of stuff going on there, and a lot of people that aren't first responders probably would benefit from listening to that because it goes in depth about the traumatic experiences that you faced, and you were a good decorated officer too. I mean, you've got promotions and commendations, and you went through a lot of stuff in your department.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel blessed. I look back on my time in the department, and it was a great training tool for what I'm doing now, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. But let's get to that. So you were a cop doing your stuff. You became undercover narcotics,
Hmm.
which was my favorite, and went out there and worked with CIs and got the dope and did the search warrants and did the surveillances and hooked up people and did big cases and lots of evidence. And so what happened that ended all that for you?
So I had actually left the undercover unit. I was still working undercover on a bikes team, kind of street level crimes,
Mhm.
and I was involved in a traffic altercation. I was working as CI, and the CI was telling me about a scene that was about to happen, where a prostitute was going to be, or the CI was actually a prostitute. And she had information that a drug deal was going to go down, where a mom was prostituting out her daughter.
Hmm.
And so, and what was funny is, as you talk about that, I had to develop some disdain for narcotics, for people under the influence of drugs and under the influence of alcohol. Because you see these scenes where people are being run over,
Yeah.
cars getting blown up. All this stuff is it's chaos.
Shot over dope.
Over dope, yeah. And you're like, dude, what the hell is this drive for this dope?
Right.
And
Right.
when I heard that this mom was bringing her daughter to the scene to prostitute in exchange for dope, it affected me, man.
Sure.
And so that's what happened. The mom drove up, the dope dealer comes, the dope dealer starts talking to the daughter, a transaction happens, and we come up and infiltrate it. We stop it. And a long story short, mom wants to get away. She throws it in reverse and runs over my partner and I.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. So now I'm pissed. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now I'm angry. And I have this, I hear that dog out there, but it's not my dog. I don't even have one. So
now you do.
Yeah, now I guess I got one in my yard. But it's interesting, like I had this disdain, I had this frustration for it, and then I get run over by this lady who's under the influence.
Yep.
Okay. And so with that, of course, you start going to the doctors. I had to get total knee surgeries. And the biggest issue was my doctor. Okay.
Mhm.
He tells me, hey, you're a cop. You're never going to get hooked on pills. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And because I had seen people who had used for years. And so the bottom line is, okay, I'm great. I'm not going to get hooked on these things.
Mhm.
And I get hooked on them. And where I went wrong is my injuries were so severe that the department came back to me and said, we need to medically retire you. So of course I go through the board, we sit in the room, they go through my level of injuries, and they're like, hey, you're a risk.
Yeah.
You're a risk to other people. So if we put you back in the street, that's a huge issue. What happens if you jump a wall, you get in a fight, you tear your knee out, you can't get there.
What was that like? What was that like going through that?
Man, for me, that was my identity.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, you know what I'm talking about. Like, being a cop, being a street level cop's cool. But there was something about being an undercover cop where you just meet this level of really cool.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
you might think you're cooler than you are.
Yeah, I probably thought I was cool. Or,
Yeah.
You see the movies and I'm like, man, I'm doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I kind of got wrapped up in that identity. And the reason is early on in my childhood, it was a strict childhood,
Mm-hmm.
And so working undercover allowed me to express myself. I got to grow my hair out, my beard, my, earring, you know how it is. And
Oh, yeah.
you get to take on this different persona. So when they tell you, hey, we're going to retire you, then what? Where's your identity wrapped up in?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I'm home and I'm working as a police officer one day. The next day I'm at home and I have little kids. Now I'm changing diapers. I'm doing dishes. I'm doing those dad things. And I'm miserable.
Yeah.
Because you go from this level up here of excitement and adrenaline and everything's moving to sadness. Like, where's my team at? Nobody was calling me. Nobody was checking on me. Where are my brothers at?
It's just a number, huh?
Yeah.
It felt like it's a number. When you first started the academy, when you first got on patrol, did you ever think of doing anything else but being a cop? Did you ever have like a plan B in case you got injured or in case you got ran over by a car?
No, man. I wanted that 20-year retirement. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was my focus.
Yeah. So now you're sitting at home with the kids. Your friends aren't calling you. You don't have all the super secret top clearance undercover stuff that we all had. And you're sort of put on the back burner. They know you're around, but you're not at the department anymore. So you're not one of us.
So right there is the destruction. So if there's men out and women out there listening, this is the biggest destruction, right? In addiction, it is fueled by anger, loneliness, tired, sadness, right? And that's where we get it. So the opiates, though I was taking it for my knee pain and my ankle pain and my hand pain, they also were a good supplement for my brain pain, right? And it gave me that energy and that boost, and it made me forget about all that other crap.
Right.
So that was a recipe for disaster.
I'm with you on that. And some of us do have that in our bodies where, our opiate receptors are boom. As soon as I found Vicodin for the first time, I was like, I don't have to drink anymore. I have these in case I need them. I felt great. I wanted to clean the house. And so you started with like Vicodin or Percocet or those kind of opiates.
Yeah, hydros.
Yeah, and the doctor is just giving them to you because you can't get addicted, man. You're a cop.
Yes, I won't get addicted. And I had a hand doctor because I blew my hand out. Wow. So I have a doctor there. I have a knee doctor. So I had, I think 2 or 3 doctors. So I could go to one and say, hey, my hand's really hurting a little bit more this week. You think you can up it? And then I go to the other doctor. Hey, you think you could, man, it was making me kind of queasy last week. Can you lower my, I'm sitting there playing these doctors because I had mastered that, right? I mean, as an undercover cop, you got to know how to communicate and beguile and lie and be deceitful.
Yeah. You got to keep it going on, especially when you get dependent on it. Like you did, I did, we'll do whatever he takes. And then looking back at our career and looking at the drug addict and, drunk out there, we know why they do what they do because they don't know anything else.
And see, that hits it, Mike. I actually became that. I became what I had so much hatred for, to the point to where I had a buddy that I was actually giving my excess pills to so he could bring them, trade them for money. Right. So I was the middleman.
Yeah.
Or not even the middleman. I was the actual, a supplier. He's taking him down. He's bringing me cash and bringing it. And I'm like, oh, this is a great gig.
Yeah.
Great gig.
Yep.
And here I am, the guy that I hated.
Yeah. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. The shame that you feel. How did you deal with all that? Where did it go from there?
I kept using for 10 years.
Yep.
Ruined my family. Destruction. And I kept the lie up, man. And not only that, this is where I really went wrong, Mike, is so I have this addiction going on. And I also had the addiction to the job, the fuel, that excitement. And so where do you turn to? I have a wife, I have kids, right? It's a boring life comparison to what I had. And so my addiction started going into other phases of life, like inappropriate relationships with women, sexting. I had an affair, right? I started doing all these things that I can't blame it on the addiction because it was 100%. I didn't. I own that.
Right.
But I was being, I was living this lie.
You were a different person. It changes you.
Oh,
you took the first pill, but once you start getting into that train and get on that train, you're going down that hill, there's no stopping you. So lives get ruined, marriages get ruined, and families get pulled apart because of it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm over 11 years clean, and I'm still dealing with the aftermath of the destruction I caused in my family.
Yeah. And you're doing it, and you don't have to go back to what you were doing before.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I have to be intentional about my recovery.
Right. How'd you get sober? What happened with that? And what did you find? Did you go to, did you just stop on your own, or what happened?
That's an awesome question. And I'm going to preface it by, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah.
At all. I don't recommend this. So because I'm an A-type personality, this is what happened. It's early morning. I go into my bathroom. I open up my cabinet like I do every day. There's a bunch of pill bottles. It had numbers on it. I knew exactly how many pills I had, etc. Okay. Well, I take a pill, take some water, close it. And when that window closed, I have a mirror into my bedroom and I could see it. And I'm like sitting there going, you got to be freaking kidding me. You live in a crack house.
Wow.
And I could see the reflection of what I'd become. My house was a disaster. My pills are perfectly in place and order, written on,
Of
but my
course.
room smelled. You know what those
Mhm.
crack house. I mean, you know what
Oh
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah. You
It's
name it.
horrendous. And so out of haste, man, I opened up that cabinet, grabbed all my pills, and I dumped them. And this is where I kind of laugh about it is if I was a scuba diver, man, I would have jumped down. Like when I realized, bro, you just dumped all your pills. I was
Yep.
diving to get that stuff. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I just needed one more to take the edge off. But I made a decision at that point in time. You know, I heard there's a difference between being finished and done.
Mm.
Right? Being
That's a good
finished
point.
means, yeah, I finished the race or I finished my test or, but being done is I knew that I needed to be done. And so I took that up as an opportunity. And then I detoxed on my own in my bathroom. And
Wow.
something that I want to share is that was the loneliest, most pain, sadness, and sorrow I've ever felt in my life. Because I realized a very important thing at that moment when I started detoxing. Nobody was coming for me. I was alone. And I had to make a decision. Brock, you have to fight this thing alone because you've lied so long. You've alienated everybody in your life because of the addiction. I just didn't want anybody to know. So I kind of pushed them away, right? I still have my kids, but nobody's coming. And at that point, it kind of fired me up like, hey, you're going to have to go through this, brother. And when I say through it, if you wouldn't know anything about a withdrawal of opiates without medical help, it is lonely and painful.
I describe it as this. I describe it as you feel like you're going to die, but you know that you won't, and you have
But
to
you
live
want
through
to.
it. And but you want to, and it just, yeah, it's terrible being alone. So you got through. So how long did it take you to finally eat stuff, drink, get out in the sunlight?
7 days.
A whole week.
I went through it for 7 days. Yeah. And I did those deathbed confessionals with God.
Oh yeah.
Converse with him. Hey, God, if you just let me get out of this, I'll never do it again. But in my back mind, I'm like, all I got to do is get one pill and make this pain go away. And I'm sitting there in the bathroom trying to pick a fight with God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what are you doing, man? Like coming out. I'm like, what are you doing? You're not going to win this battle. Just go through it.
Yeah, and you think if we have a connection to our higher power or God, that they wouldn't know that you're thinking about having a freaking pill, once you get through it. So it's funny. It really is. And it sounds like you're being done. The way it being done got described to me, what's really always stuck is, do you know when you're done? The time that you know that you're done, you put down the shovel. You stop digging. And I knew when I was done, I put down the shovel and I'll try to mend my life as best as possible. And so you're in your house, you are pretty much detoxed, still feeling like shit, because even getting detoxed, it's not in your system anymore, but the mental part of it, your habits, 10 years of doing this, lying, cheating, stealing, losing, suffering in silence for the most part, because no one else really knew probably how down the path you got. So what was your what happened? So did you ever go to like AA, Narcotics Anonymous, Smart Recovery? Did you do any kind of program or church?
I did. I went to some church ARP meetings, some AA meetings, but I didn't honestly, as much as this is a funny story you'll laugh at, Mike. When I worked undercover, a buddy of mine gave me some AA coins and said, hey, let me tell you about AA. This is for guys who are recovering. You can use it as a cover story. You can lay down instead of them making you use. You can throw this down and say, hey, hold on,
Ah.
I'm in AA. That was all I knew about AA. Seriously, at this time of my life, I was a
Yeah.
pretty straight kid, you know?
Yeah.
But I had these coins in my pocket. I would drop them. Hey, listen, man, I just got to be honest. I'm in recovery. And the guys are usually empathetic, like, oh, dude,
Yeah,
because you
congratulations.
don't want to be doing it either.
Right. Right.
They're stuck. And so a lot of them were like, hey, man, I can respect that. Hey, here, take it, you know. And that was a cover story. And I kind
That's
of
the
laughed.
best. That's the best. I've never heard that before. I would have used it back then, man. That's
Right?
great. Yeah, I love
Great
it.
story. And so and so that was mine. Is I when, like you said, my shovel was down. I walked out of there. I knew that I wasn't going back. Number one, I was scared to death to have to repeat what I just did.
Yeah.
Like you said, though, is the hardest thing is now I had to go attack those character flaws.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a brutal task.
Yeah. So you got to look at yourself, and you got the God part down in it. You know, you're got some kind of connection with your higher power, and now you got to look at yourself and, you know, try to make it right and look at your resentments. Those are the resentments are just as bad as anything else.
Man. And you know all about transferring addictions.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Cross
now
addiction.
cross addiction,
Yeah.
yeah. And now I'm done with the opioids, right? And of course, now I'm still living in this sorrow and
Yeah.
this loneliness and sadness. So what do you pick up next? Pornography, sex
Right.
addiction. Not that I didn't have it, but it just now it got enhanced and blown up.
Sure.
And now here I am. I compare it to this big swimming pool that you can never fill up with love,
Mm-mm.
you know, and I'm just empty. And I'm like, man, now you're trying to re-identify who you are by people who don't love you, and you're
Sure.
filling a void, man.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I'm trying to work through that.
So what happened after that? How'd you get out of that?
Oh man, that's cool. I started learning about addiction recovery. I used a model that we used in the police department called the Sarah model,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Problem oriented policing: scan, analyze, respond, and assess.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Kind of different. But I'm like, man, how come I could do that on the streets, but I can't do that with my own life? So I kind of stood back and I learned a little bit about the addiction cycle and how it flows, you know, your trigger to your thought, to craving, to use remorse, and then repeat.
Sure.
Right. And I'm like, man, what's causing this addiction? So I started looking at what my triggers were. And I started breaking this down by that scan, analyze, respond, and then assess and see how you're doing.
Right.
And I realized that I was triggered every morning by my alarm clock. And I'd reach over every day, just like I was with opiates. My alarm clock would go, I'd reach over, grab opiates, throw in my mouth, take a drink, and I would start my day that way.
Right.
But on my sex addiction, it was kind of similar, where my phone would go off like Pavlov's law of conditioned response.
Right.
I reached over, looked at it. Of course, there's my trigger. Then my thoughts start coming, which is what? Hey, why don't you look at pornography? Right? What's the new thing? What's the new video? What's going on? So then your thoughts go. And as soon as your thoughts start just running out of control, a craving hits.
Yep.
And once you get a craving, that's a physical change. That's the difference between a trigger and a craving. Is a craving something physical that changes? You get an erection. Right. Now you're in trouble. You can't back out.
No.
You're dead.
Definitely not.
Right. And so then you use and you masturbate or whatever you do to that point, and then you just cycle through that again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
the obsession, you know, the obsession gets to you.
Man. And so what I did is move your trigger, change your trigger. So I took my phone and put it in another part of the house. So that alarm went off. I could still hear it. And I would always reach over to get it. I'm like, it's not here. Mm-hmm. So it got me out of bed. It changed my routine automatically. Now it gave me a second, that pause, to think about what was going on. I'm going to go use the bathroom because I got to go to the bathroom. Oh, crap, I'm in here. I might as well get my day started. Right. So slowly I changed my addiction through that Sarah model.
Good, man. That's great.
Yeah. Kind of crazy, but
yeah.
But it is identification. It's that awareness, knowledge, and choice. If you want to break addiction, you got to be aware of it. knowledgeable, and make a choice.
Sure. And it's a tough thing to do. It's tough for any of us to do that, though. The SARA model does work, though. It works in, community policing. It works in real life too.
Yeah.
If you're not a cop. So you move on from there, and you're getting your life back in order, it seems.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I get a job at the junior high school. I'm an assistant principal. Okay.
Really?
I'm assistant principal. I started in the computer department. The principal liked me. She goes, "Hey, put in for this job." I put in. I went through and I got the job. I'm like, man, I'll go from a cop. I worked in the medical examiner's office as an investigator, and I ended up as an assistant principal. And I'm looking around, going, "What am I doing here? What am I doing?"
Right.
But my principal was a very smart man. Man, he looked at me. He knew my story. He's like, "You're in the wrong business, brother. You should be running a rehab." I'm like, "What?" So his daughter was actually working in Arizona in a rehab. He goes, "Joe, go check out my daughter's facility and come back and tell me what you think." I went down there, fell in love with this place. I saw the healing. I'm like, man, I could replicate that in Northern Arizona.
That's great.
We brought it back up here, and we started a program. We ran it for 5.5 years, and I loved doing it. But I wanted to work more with police, fire, military. I wanted that first responders, and it's hard working in big groups. Like what we're doing here is that's the healing I like, and to give battle plans, ops plans to people that we can put it together. So I'm actually doing like one-on-one coaching with first responders. I mean, pretty much anybody that needs help through addiction or PTSD.
Okay. All right, good. You have your own business, or is it like something that you have a website for, or someone can contact you?
Yeah, it's called Chase the Vase. That it comes from a story from the Go-Getter. Okay. It's a World War I story. A lot of people heard of the blue vase.
All right.
Yeah. So my email is chasing the vase. And so everything I do is like just centered around what we're doing here. Just like you said, break the stigma, talk about it, open up.
Yeah, definitely. And you have a whole podcast too. You can promote that too on here, man.
Yeah, man. It is called Chase the Vase as well, where we get guys on and we just talk about recovery.
Yeah. I listened to a few episodes. Really good things that you're doing. And you're right, working with first responders. And that's why I started this podcast, just to reach out to people and places around the country that deal with it. Now I get to work at a simple recovery just with first responders. That's it, from detox to, transitioning out and transition back home, hopefully get therapy and have a better life. And a lot of people come in, they're balancing, first responder community. The first thing is we don't trust anybody, cops especially. And we're not going to put our faith and a trust into something that we don't know, we're not sure of. And so treatment and recovery, of course, it's a stigma against that. I always go by AA meetings all the time and go, 7:00 at night, year 5 in patrol. I'm like, oh, those guys are out there smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee. They're laughing. They're in a closed down church. It's what the hell they're doing. They're doing some seances and some kind of rituals, and I don't trust it. And every CI I got, or every crook off the street I would get, or a person that was dealing drugs would say, yeah, that's just bullshit. We just go there and meet to get dope. And so that was in my mind until it happened to me. And then I'm like, oh man, I'm just like them. So first responders definitely need a place. People like you, they can reach out to, even if it's just one-on-one. Do you offer like services like individual, like over the phone or Skype or Zoom type of things?
Yeah. So right now, mostly I do. They can check out, I have a challenge going on, a 30-day challenge where I just help people kickstart recovery. It's called chasethevasechallenge.com.
Okay.
Right. And so I have a group of law enforcement guys that are going through it right now. And it's been kind of interesting. I really enjoy it. It's 30 days. Every day you show up, we do some individual briefing. I give you the challenge. Tomorrow we show back up and we debrief it. How'd you do? Take it apart.
Really?
And we're super critical. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's all about centering around recovery?
All centered around recovery, based on terms and law enforcement terms that we use.
Okay.
So we understand it and can apply it
Right.
in order.
Right.
Yeah,
We get each other. Does
we
it,
do.
is it something you sign up for? Is it like a yearly membership or something, or a monthly membership, or?
Yeah, there's just a monthly fee. It's not a monthly fee. It's 30 days. It's $100.
Okay.
Okay, and that's that's super cheap. Basically, all
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
trying to do is get guys 30 days worth of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can move on to another course if you want. You can do one-on-one. But really, my focus is 30 days. If I can just get you in the right direction, you can do it.
And if you change the behavior too, that's the biggest thing in recovery is no matter what you're working. I do 12 step. I've been doing it for 9 years. I've been sober that long. From everything, I had to go, I had to stop everything in my life, including, watching myself having a cross addiction, sex, gambling, eating, ice cream. Ice cream, I'm powerless over ice cream. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it anymore, man. It's just I just don't go down that road anymore. I'll have a little bite once in a while, my family's, but I just don't indulge anymore because I have no control over it. It has control over me, and I let them win. I go, ice cream, you won. So it's sort of like a surrender that I have.
Well,
so,
that's one trait that all addicts have in common is self-regulation.
Yes.
Our inability to self-regulate.
Exactly. And it's great. I'm going to look up that challenge too. Now I know more about what it's about. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that'd like to try it at least for a month, changing your behavior, changing your ways, and offering the challenge is like going on little missions. That's a great idea, Brock. Definitely.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I have some law enforcement officers that are doing it right now. So I'm able to change it, evolve it, make it better. I mean, I was blessed. You know what I mean? Not everybody has a chance to recover.
Yeah.
Like us. I mean, the other two options are death, prison, right? And then
exactly.
Death in prison or
jails,
recover.
Institutions, death.
That's it. And so we were blessed, man. And so that's what I'm trying to do is just share that. Like, listen, man, you're not too far gone. All you need is a little kickstart. Let's get it going and give them some tools.
Yeah.
That's a big thing is the tools.
And some aren't willing to go to inpatient place, even if it's all 100% first responders. They go, okay, 30 days, $100. I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow Brock. I trust Brock, and he speaks my language, and we'll get through this. And I love it. I love what you're doing, and I really hope that we stay friends and we stay connected because we can't do this alone. We can do it alone, but we don't have to. And in recovery, for us to like bring it back, and what you're doing right now, you're bringing it back, and you're letting people grow and listen and change their lives, and knowing that it's not too late. Wherever they're at right now, it's not too late. They can stop what they're doing if they're willing to just put out their hand and say they need some help.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. And that's kind of why I'm doing it 30 days on Zoom, face to face, because some of us don't want to go into rehab. Some of us don't want to go to those AA meetings. Hey, Brock, this is who I am. I'm a recovering addict. They don't want that. And this keeps a little more of that anonymity between people.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you call each other on their bullshit too. I know you. I mean, you're the first person to call people on their bullshit. So people need that. I need that too. I need to surround myself with people like that in my life because there's always bullshit on my head going around. I don't do it as much as I did before, but it's still there. And if it ever pops its head out, I got good people around me that could just snap it right back in place.
That's a good team, brother.
That's right, man. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, man. Anything else you want to say to anybody before we take off here? I'd love to have you on again. I mean, I think that we should keep in touch at least every couple months and come out here and do a podcast.
I'd be totally honored. I love it, man. I love what you're doing. I've listened to your podcast. Spot on, brother.
Yeah. Right on. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to tell our brothers and sisters out there listening right now?
Hey, man, there's hope. There's hope. There's always hope. Look up. If you can look up, you can get up, right?
Yeah.
I love that, man. So just hang in there. Let's work together. There are people out there that care about you and love you.
That's beautiful, man. Beautiful. Everybody listening, this is Brock, and he's an amazing guy. Thank you so much for being on the show. And look him up, Chasing the Vase. Look up his name. It'll pop hot everywhere on Google. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, brother.
And everybody else, until next time, have a great day, great rest of your week, and remember to love each other. Talk to you soon.